What if leadership wasn't about titles, positions, or authority, but about energy, about the courage to dream big, to challenge what's possible, and to make people believe they can do more than they ever thought they could? That's the kind of leadership that built empires, inspired generations, and changed industries forever. And there's one man who embodies that spirit more than almost anyone else. A leader who turned fun into strategy, curiosity into innovation, and humanity into a business advantage. His name, Richard Branson. From the moment you hear his laugh or see that twinkle in his eye, you know he's not your average billionaire. He's not the kind who hides behind boardroom walls or PowerPoint slides. He's the kind who shows up barefoot on the beach, shaking hands with his team, asking questions that start with, "Why not?" When most leaders look at risk, they see danger. Branson looks at it and sees adventure. And that one word, adventure, defines everything about how he leads, how he builds, and how he inspires. Think about it. Here's a man who dropped out of school at 16, battled dyslexia, and started his first business from a public phone booth. No fancy MBA, no corporate ladder, just a belief that business could be bold, joyful, and deeply human. He didn't just create companies, he created experiences that made people feel something. When he launched Virgin Records, it wasn't just about selling music, it was about giving a voice to the artists who didn't fit in anywhere else. When he started Virgin Atlantic, it wasn't about competing with airlines, it was about reimagining what flying could be. And when he looked up at the stars and dreamed of space travel, he didn't think that's impossible. He thought, why not us? That's the mindset that separates the managers from the leaders, the cautious from the courageous, the ones who play it safe from the ones who change the game. Branson never waited for permission to innovate. He built his life around the belief that the best ideas often come disguised as risks. And in every leap he took, every new company, every new frontier, he carried one constant truth. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking charge of the moment. And maybe that's why people don't just work for him, they follow him, because his leadership isn't driven by profit margins or quarterly reports. It's driven by passion, purpose, and an unshakable trust in people. He believes that when you empower people, when you give them the freedom to experiment, to fail, and to grow, magic happens, innovation happens, greatness happens. So, if you've ever wondered what makes a leader unforgettable, it's this. It's not their title, it's their spirit. It's not what they control, it's what they inspire. And few leaders have inspired more joy, creativity, and courage than the man who built Virgin on a single radical idea. That business should be fun, fearless, and full of life. Because the truth is, leadership isn't about following the rules, it's about rewriting them. And that's exactly where Richard Branson's story begins. It all started with a young dreamer who believed that rules were meant to be challenged. A teenager sitting in his small room in London, struggling with dyslexia, but filled with ideas that refused to stay quiet. While most people saw his learning difficulty as a limitation, he saw it as freedom. Freedom from the rigid patterns of how things were supposed to be done. He couldn't spell perfectly, but he could see possibility where others saw barriers, and that became his greatest advantage. He was just 16 when he dropped out of school, not because he couldn't keep up, but because he wanted to catch up with life. He launched a small magazine called Student, focused on giving young people a voice, talking about the issues they cared about, music they loved, and the world they wanted to change. He had no money, no network, just a phone and a notebook filled with names of people he wanted to interview. But that magazine became more than paper and ink. It became his first taste of leadership. He learned how to persuade, how to build a team, and how to make people believe in a vision that didn't exist yet. That's where his story of fearless leadership truly began. From that tiny publication, a seed was planted. One day, while running the magazine, he stumbled upon an opportunity selling music records through mail order. It was a small idea, born from the frustration of overpriced records in stores. He thought, why not make music more accessible to everyone? That idea became Virgin Records. It started in the basement of a church with a few secondhand cushions, a phone line, and a lot of belief. He wasn't just selling records, he was building a culture, one that celebrated creativity, rebellion, and freedom. When Virgin Records signed unknown artists like Mike Oldfield and later the Sex Pistols, critics called him reckless. But he saw something others didn't: potential. Where others saw chaos, he saw a new sound, a new movement. That decision didn't just make money, it made history. It defined the Virgin brand: bold, unapologetic, and alive with purpose. But here's where his leadership truly stood apart. He didn't micromanage. He didn't hover over his team. He trusted them. He gave them the space to create, to take risks, and to fail if they had to. And in return, they gave him loyalty that couldn't be bought. That's the kind of trust that transforms employees into believers. As Virgin Records took off, most people would have stopped there, satisfied, successful, and stable. But not him. Stability wasn't his goal. Exploration was. So when an opportunity appeared in one of the most competitive industries in the world, the airline business, he didn't hesitate. He saw a problem in how airlines treated their passengers, and he thought, we can make this better. When he approached British Airways executives with his ideas, they laughed. Competing with them was unthinkable. It would take hundreds of millions of dollars, a fleet of planes, and years of experience. He had none of those, but he had one powerful thing: the courage to start anyway. He leased a single second-hand Boeing 747, painted the word Virgin across its body, and began Virgin Atlantic. From the very first flight, it was different. Flight attendants smiled like they meant it. The service was personal, the experience human. They offered entertainment, better food, and an atmosphere that made flying feel like a celebration, not a chore. He didn't just sell tickets, he sold joy. That became his leadership trademark. But it wasn't smooth sailing. Virgin Atlantic faced storms, fierce competition, sabotage from rivals, and even financial near collapse. British Airways tried to crush the newcomer with smear campaigns and corporate pressure. Many leaders would have backed down, sold out, or walked away, but he didn't. He fought back, not with bitterness, but with resilience. He took them to court and won, proving that heart and integrity could win even in the toughest corporate battles. That victory wasn't just for him. It was for every dreamer told they were too small to compete with giants. And just when people thought he'd reached his limit, he set his sights even higher, literally. He started Virgin Galactic, a company built to make space accessible to ordinary people. Everyone told him it was madness. The technology wasn't ready, the risks were astronomical, and the costs were sky high. But that didn't stop him, because to him, failure wasn't the end. It was part of the adventure. That's something powerful about his journey, his relationship with failure. He never hid from it, never disguised it. When Virgin Cola failed, when Virgin Brides shut down, when Virgin Trains hit problems, he called them what they were: lessons. He believed that success and failure were two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. And he lived by that philosophy every single day. He once said that life should be one long, bold adventure, that if you're not taking risks, you're not really living. And his leadership reflects exactly that. Not the safety of comfort, but the excitement of curiosity. He turned challenges into experiments, setbacks into stories, and ideas into entire industries. But what truly made his leadership extraordinary wasn't just his willingness to take risks. It was how he treated people. Whether it was his pilots, his assistants, or his customers, he made everyone feel seen. He believed that businesses aren't built on products or profits, but on people. He would walk into offices and ask, "Are you having fun?" Because to him, joy was not a distraction from success. It was the foundation of it. He knew that when people are happy, creativity flows naturally. There's a famous story that captures this spirit perfectly. Once, during an early Virgin Atlantic flight, a passenger's seat broke mid-flight. Instead of ignoring it or passing the issue to a junior employee, he personally went to apologize. Barefoot, smiling, and offering his own seat for the journey. That's not PR. That's presence. That's leadership in its purest form, being human. Over the years, his leadership turned into something bigger than business. It became a philosophy, a reminder that life and leadership are not separate. the same energy you bring to your adventures, your family, your passions, that's the energy that inspires people to follow you. He blurred the lines between work and play, showing the world that you can build an empire and enjoy the journey. From music to airlines, from mobile phones to space exploration, his ventures may look different on the surface, but they all share one heartbeat: belief in people, belief in purpose, and belief in possibility. That's why his story resonates so deeply. Because it's not just about building companies, it's about building confidence, the kind that makes others believe they can do extraordinary things too. And through every twist and turn, every victory and failure, he's proven one timeless truth. Leadership is not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about showing up when others give up. It's about daring to dream, daring to fall, and daring to rise again. Because leadership at its core is not a destination. It's a journey of curiosity, courage, and endless adventure. And his journey is far from over. It's just the beginning of what fearless leadership can truly look like. When you look deeper into the way Richard Branson leads, you start to realize that his success isn't just about luck, timing, or charisma. It's about principles. Deep human principles that shape every decision, every company, and every person he works with. His leadership isn't a set of rules, it's a rhythm, one that moves with trust, courage, and genuine care for people. He built his empire not by managing systems, but by mobilizing hearts, and that's what sets him apart. The first thing you notice about his leadership style is how much he values empowerment. Most leaders say they trust their teams, but few actually let go of control. Branson does. He once said that the best leaders don't tell people how to do things. They inspire them to figure it out themselves. He believes in creating leaders, not followers. He hires smart people, gives them the vision, and then gives them freedom. The freedom to make mistakes, to innovate, to take ownership. And when they succeed, he celebrates them, not himself. This approach creates something powerful: emotional ownership. When people feel trusted, they stop working for a company and start working with it. They stop needing supervision and start creating solutions. That's the kind of culture Branson builds, one where people wake up excited, not exhausted, where the workplace feels more like a mission than a job. He's proof that when you trust people to rise, they don't just meet expectations, they redefine them. But empowerment isn't the only secret to his success. It's also how he views risk. Branson's entire career is built on risk-taking, but not reckless risk. He calls it calculated courage. Before he dives into a new venture, he studies it, prepares, and surrounds himself with experts. Then he leaps. He's not fearless. He's brave. There's a difference. Fearless people ignore danger. Brave people see it, respect it, and move forward anyway. That's how he's built industries others wouldn't even touch, because he understands that innovation lives just beyond the edge of comfort. He's the kind of leader who sees failure as fuel. Every setback, every mistake, every business that didn't work, it all became data for his next breakthrough. He doesn't carry failure as shame, he carries it as experience. It's why he encourages his teams to experiment boldly. If you punish failure, people hide their creativity. But if you celebrate learning, they bring you their best ideas. And that's how he keeps Virgin innovative even decades later. Not by enforcing rules, but by encouraging rebellion against mediocrity. Another defining insight from Branson's leadership is his philosophy of fun. To many, fun sounds unprofessional, but to him, it's the lifeblood of productivity. He believes that when people enjoy their work, they give more of themselves to it. Fun, for him, isn't about parties or perks. It's about passion. It's about creating an environment where laughter, curiosity, and collaboration come naturally. Because when people feel emotionally safe, they also feel creatively free. They're not afraid to speak up, to try new things, to fail forward. And if you think about it, that's why the Virgin brand feels alive. Every time you interact with it, whether it's flying on a Virgin plane or hearing about one of his new ventures, there's this sense of personality. It's human, it's warm, that's intentional. Branson never wanted Virgin to be just another corporate machine. He wanted it to have a heartbeat. That's why his leadership always comes back to one simple truth. Business is about people, not profit, not power, people. He listens, truly listens, to the people who work with him. He visits teams personally, asks for their ideas, and values their feedback. He believes the best ideas rarely come from the top. They come from the front lines, from the people who deal with customers every day. And that humility, that willingness to listen, is what keeps his companies grounded, even as they reach for the sky. Another powerful insight is how he leads by example. He doesn't demand respect through authority. He earns it through authenticity. When his companies face tough times, he's the first to show up. When his team works hard, he's there celebrating with them. Leadership, in his eyes, is not a throne. It's a service. It's showing up not because you have to, but because you care. That's why people trust him, not because of his money or fame, but because they know he's real. He also understands the importance of storytelling in leadership. Every idea he launches has a story, a narrative people can believe in. He knows that humans don't follow instructions, they follow inspiration. He turns his business goals into missions. When Virgin Atlantic launched, it wasn't just about cheaper flights, it was about making flying fun again. When Virgin Galactic started, it wasn't about profit, it was about making space travel accessible for humanity. People don't rally behind spreadsheets, they rally behind stories that make them feel part of something bigger. And through it all, he practices optimism. Not the naive kind, but the kind that looks at chaos and still finds opportunity. When problems arise, he doesn't ask, who's to blame? He asks, what can we do better? That mindset creates progress. It turns obstacles into innovation. And that's why, even in industries dominated by fear and regulation, Branson's companies stand out. They dare to be positive, even in pressure. One of the most powerful things about his leadership is how he balances ambition with humanity. He wants to win, but never at the cost of people's well-being. He wants to grow, but not at the expense of integrity. He's not afraid to say no to opportunities that don't align with his values. Because to him, leadership isn't just about doing things right. It's about doing the right things. And perhaps the greatest insight of all is that he never stopped being a learner. Despite his fame, despite his billions, he remains endlessly curious. He asks questions, he experiments, he plays. He treats life like an open field of discovery. That's what keeps him and his companies young. Curiosity, he says, is the real engine of leadership. The moment you think you know it all, you stop growing. And when you stop growing, you stop leading. Branson's style teaches us that great leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about bringing out the smartest ideas in the room. It's not about having all the answers, but asking the right questions. It's about leading with heart, not ego. Because when you lead with heart, you don't just build companies, you build cultures. He proves that leadership doesn't have to be serious to be successful. It can be joyful, playful, and still deeply impactful. It can break barriers without breaking spirits. It can be visionary and human at the same time. And maybe that's the biggest insight of all, that leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about creating spaces where people can be their best selves and reminding them that business, at its best, is just another way to make life better for others. And as his journey shows, when you lead with that kind of mindset, when you empower people, embrace risk, and fill your work with purpose and play, success doesn't just follow you, it becomes inevitable. Because people don't remember leaders for their power, they remember them for how they made them feel. And Richard Branson makes everyone, from his employees to his customers, feel that anything is possible when you lead with courage, kindness, and an unshakable belief in the human spirit. Now, let's turn Richard Branson's philosophy into lessons you can actually live by. Principles that don't just sound inspiring, but transform the way you lead, the way you build, and the way you move through life. Because leadership isn't theory, it's practice. And Branson's life is full of powerful, actionable steps that anyone can follow, no matter where they're starting from. The first lesson is empower your people, then trust them completely. Branson doesn't build companies around systems. He builds them around people. He believes that if you take care of your employees first, they'll take care of your business. That means giving them real ownership, the kind that comes with freedom, not fear. When you delegate, don't just assign tasks. Give people the authority to make decisions. That's how innovation grows. Trust is the currency of great leadership, and when you give it freely, it multiplies. People don't rise when they're watched. They rise when they're believed in. The second lesson is redefine your relationship with failure. Most people let failure define their limits. Branson uses it to expand his. Every setback, from failed ventures to bad decisions, became a stepping stone towards something better. The key is to fail forward. Ask, what can this teach me? Instead of, why did this happen to me? When you remove the fear of failure, you create a culture of courage. That's where creativity thrives, because true innovation doesn't come from perfection. It comes from persistence. Then comes the third lesson. Lead with passion, fun, and humanity. Branson proves that leadership doesn't have to be stiff, cold, or overly serious. He shows that joy is a strength, not a weakness. When you create an environment where people can smile, laugh, and express themselves, you unlock their best selves. Energy is contagious, and so is positivity. So bring passion into your meetings, laughter into your projects, and empathy into your communication. The more human you are, the more people will connect to your vision. The fourth lesson is take smart risks and stay curious. The world doesn't reward the safe, it rewards the bold. But bold doesn't mean blind, it means calculated. Do your homework, know your numbers, but when your gut and your heart align, take the leap. That's how every major breakthrough happens. Don't wait for perfect conditions, they never come. The best leaders act when others hesitate. Curiosity fuels that action. Keep asking, what if and why not? Those two questions can open doors that fear keeps closed. And finally, lead by example, always. People watch what you do more than what you say. Branson shows up, not just in moments of glory, but in moments of challenge. When your team sees you stay calm in chaos, they learn courage. When they see you admit mistakes, they learn humility. Leadership is mirrored behavior. Be the example of the culture you want to create, one built on trust, resilience, and passion. Because when you live these lessons, empowering others, embracing failure, leading with joy, taking bold risks, and modeling authenticity, you don't just lead a team, you ignite a movement that carries your vision forward long after you've left the room. And that's the kind of leadership the world never forgets. Every once in a while, a leader comes along who reminds us that business isn't just about balance sheets or bottom lines, it's about belief. Richard Branson is one of those rare leaders who proves that the greatest investment you can ever make is in people, passion, and possibility. He built an empire not by following a rigid formula, but by following his instincts, by daring to see opportunity where others saw limitation. And that's what great leadership truly is, the courage to believe in something before the world does. He shows us that leadership doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't have to be perfect to be inspiring. It simply has to be real. Branson's story reminds us that the best leaders are the ones who dare to be themselves, unfiltered, unafraid, and unstoppable, because authenticity is magnetic. When you lead with sincerity, when your actions reflect your words, people don't just listen, they follow. They believe in the vision because they believe in you. And the truth is, we all have a little of that Branson spirit inside us, that spark that whispers, what if? The only difference between dreamers and doers is action. Branson didn't wait for the right time, the right opportunity, or the right plan. He started where he was with what he had and learned along the way. That's the mindset of every true leader. They don't wait for permission to start. They start and figure it out as they go. He reminds us that success is not built in comfort. It's forged in courage, in those moments when you say yes to challenges that scare you, when you take that leap not knowing where you'll land. The world doesn't remember those who played it safe. It remembers those who dared to fly. And Branson dared again and again, not because he knew he'd succeed, but because he believed he'd learn. That's leadership, not having certainty, but having conviction. What makes his journey so deeply inspiring is how he kept his humanity intact while chasing greatness. He laughed through challenges, lifted others along the way, and never lost sight of the joy in the journey. Leadership, as he lives it, isn't about being the hero. It's about helping others become heroes in their own stories. When you empower people, when you give them faith in themselves, you multiply your impact far beyond what you could ever achieve alone. So as you think about your own path, your team, your vision, your dreams, remember this: leadership isn't something you're given, it's something you choose every single day. You choose it when you show up with optimism. You choose it when you take risks. You choose it when you believe that what you're doing matters. That's how legacies are built, not in boardrooms, but in the brave decisions made by people who refuse to play small. Because leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about leading the charge toward possibility, toward change, toward a better future for everyone who believes in you. And when you carry that fire forward, when you lead with the same passion, courage, and heart that Richard Branson embodies, you don't just change your world. You change the world one fearless decision at a time.